Hey everybody, Chris Dunn here, and today I have the fascinating, infamous James Altucher with me. How you doing, James?
Chris, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being here. Now, for anybody that doesn't know James, he started over 20 businesses, sold a handful of them for large exits. Has made and lost tens of millions of dollars, which I think is really interesting. And we'll talk about your story here in a second. He's the author of I think 15 or more books now. I've read most of them. And he runs an incredibly successful podcast and blog. And, he's probably admitted to crying more than any man that I know. And that's what I love about you, man. Your authenticity and,
Thanks.
how you don't hold anything back.
I think I cried last night.
Nice. Well, so I guess let's just start from the beginning for anybody that doesn't know you. You've had some incredible success. You've had a roller coaster ride of just really interesting stuff that's happened to you since the dot-com boom and bust. And let's just start there, man. Like, how did you get started? What happened? What was your first exit? And let's go from there.
Okay, sure. So I'll go straight to the first business I started. I knew a lot about the internet. So I majored in computer science. I went to grad school in computer science. I don't say that because it's useful or building credibility. In fact, when I first got a job, like a real job as a programmer, my programming was so bad that they actually had to send me to remedial school for 2 months to be as good a programmer as their weakest programmer at the job. So this is after I had already put in my 10,000 hours programming. I was just a mess at programming. But I ended up, because I knew about this one little thing called the internet that nobody else knew about, I had no business sense at all. So instead of making like some search engine or whatever, I just would go to my friends and say, hey, do you need a website? And I would build the software. You had to build, there wasn't anything like WordPress or anything like that. You had to actually build the software to make a website so that clicks would work and forms would work and internet things would work. So I would build websites. And then I started building, I built a strong niche for myself. Is that how you say it? Niche or niche?
Niche. I say niche.
Okay, I say
Yeah.
niche now. So I built a niche for myself where, as you can tell just by my appearance, I became the guy, the go-to guy for building the websites for gangster rap record labels.
Of course, man. You look really hood right now.
That was it. They knew where I was coming from. So I built Bad Boy Records, Loud Records, Death Row Records, Jive Records, every website from all the major record labels that were doing rap. Then I did all of the movie studios. I did TimeWarner.com. I did websites for the movie The Matrix. I did all of HBO stuff. I did AmericanExpress.com. More corporate stuff. So, and by the way, I did a lot of this. The first 18 months of this business, I was a full-time employee at HBO. So I would work at HBO 9 to 5, and then I would work all night at my business. And we had about a dozen employees by the time I finally quit HBO to join my own company full-time.
That's really incredible, man. So you were burning the midnight oil with a full staff, still working a full-time job. What made you finally make that jump? Was it you guys got to a certain level of income, or were you ready to sell at that point, or what happened?
We got to a certain level of income, and a lot of people say to me, "Oh, I have this idea. Can I just raise money now and quit my job?" And the answer is no. The real world is much harder than that. I would have to lock myself in a conference room at HBO with people banging on the door trying to get in while I was debugging AmericanExpress.com at the same time.
That's
Like
awesome.
it was hard work and managing people and going back and forth. It was crazy. But that's what you have to do. To make that leap, you kind of have to go through this test of fire and you have to pass through that fire. So it was hard, but I did it, and then almost a year later to the day. So to answer your question, though, I didn't want to lose income at all. I was very conservative. People think entrepreneurs are these great risk takers. They're like Tarzan swinging on a rope, hopefully he'll land someplace without a lion or whatever. But I was very conservative. I didn't want a single drop in income. So I made sure that my company would be able to replace not only the money I was making at my company, but also my salary at my full-time job.
Nice.
So
And that was the first company that you sold, right? The
yes,
website business, and that was before like it became really easy to start making websites. How much did you sell that for?
I sold that for 15 million. And you make a good point. I was talking to my little sister one day, and she said, "Oh, we're learning in high school how to make websites." And I was thinking, "Holy jeez, I just charged $75,000 to make a three-page website for Dennis Miller." Like now, high school kids are learning how to make even better websites than me.
Yeah.
So I instantly sold the business. Literally, I was like smart every step of the way. Like I cashed out. I didn't hold on to the stock, cashed out, had the cash in the bank, and then I made every stupid decision you could possibly make. It was really painful.
So you went from like 15 million cash to like $100, right?
Yeah, literally, I looked at my ATM machine one day and I had $143 left in the bank. And my wife, who's now my ex-wife, was standing behind me and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I was just like on the ATM machine, like, what am I gonna do?
Oh
Like,
man.
and so I didn't even know, first off, I didn't even know what that meant. Like, I had $15 million dollars like a year earlier, and what does it even, like, I thought maybe a diaper cost $143. I had like no concept of money at this point.
Right.
So I called my parents and I said, "Hey, can I drive 100 miles and borrow $1,000 from you? Because I might have to buy diapers." And like I had no concept of what diapers cost. I was just spending money on anything I wanted. Like,
Well, you were staying in like $1,000 a night hotels at this point, right?
yeah, I was doing. I had a penthouse in Tribeca, and I was staying in hotels. And then when I wanted to play cards, I would take a helicopter to Atlantic City, where I had another house. And here I was, smart every step of the way about the internet. But every business I was investing in was an internet business. So because I figured, well, the internet's not going anywhere, so how could these stocks go down? But of course, they all did. Even though the internet is here to stay, it doesn't. The stock market doesn't have to pay any attention to that
Yeah.
to make up its own mind. And so I did everything stupid. I wanted to borrow money from my parents. They said no. And so I lost my house. I lost everything. I moved like 100 miles north. I was literally in exile. Nobody would talk to me. I couldn't get any job. What were people going to hire me for? Like, the internet was supposedly dead. I no longer knew how to program because I've been managing for 3 or 4 years now. So it would have to be I'd have to really work at it to get to basic level again. And here I was, also investing in all these crappy companies. So I wasn't really a known investor. So I decided to just look, I'm going to get good at investing. So I probably spent, you know, 10,000 straight hours in a row reading every book about investing, writing software, modeling the markets, starting to manage my own money a little bit more effectively, managing other people's money, building up a hedge fund. And that became like my next career, was essentially the hedge fund business.
And when you had the hedge fund, were you day trading or what kind of trades were you taking?
I was like minute trading.
Yeah.
So I would put on a trade on So I had software that would basically say, okay, Microsoft just released earnings and the market's down 5 days in a row. What has happened the past 100 times this situation has occurred? Well, between 9:30 and 9:35, NASDAQ futures would go up 3 points. Statistically, maybe not every time, but like 80% chance. And so I would make that trade. I would buy NASDAQ futures at the open, and 5 minutes later, no matter what, I would get out.
Now, were you trading the E-minis or?
Yeah, E-minis.
Okay, cool.
MQ.
So this was before, I remember the days. I've been trading the E-mini since the early 2000s as well. And I remember the days before the high frequency stuff. This was when you could actually make money off of news and actually beat that stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. It's really interesting you bring that up because, I mean, I had a lot of really good strategies. And then I wrote software to have other people figure out patterns that are happening in the market for me. So I would wake up in the morning and like a dozen different people would send patterns to me that had happened in the market. And if all the patterns added up to one trade, I would make that trade. So I really had an effective operation going. But high frequency trading has totally ruined that strategy. And
Yep.
I still have people calling me up and say, "Hey, I'm gonna learn how to do Excel and start trading. I think I have a real edge." And I'm like,
Nope,
"Man,
not anymore.
not anymore." And I would try to explain, and they would say, "Yeah, well, I'm just gonna hit a few home runs first, and then I'll see." And I'm like, "Man, I'm just not even gonna
Yeah.
argue."
They will tear you apart, rip you from limb to limb, man. It's incredible how much the markets have really changed. I noticed it around 07, 08 when the market conditions really started to shift.
'07 was the last year the strategy worked.
Yeah.
So, but it worked really good from like '03 to '07. In part because a bull market had less volatility in some ways, so this type of volatility worked. But also, just these algorithms got arbitraged away. I mean, I remember one time I pitched everything to Stevie Cohen, the hedge fund manager, and he said, "Well, how about we hire you instead of running your own hedge fund?" And I said, "That sounds great." And he said, "But first, how about you text me some of your trades?" And I said, "No problem." And at this point, I had maybe 150 successful trades in a row. Like every one of my trades was working.
Yep.
And for 7 days in a row, I texted him the trade I was going to make. Every single one of those trades failed.
It's crazy how fast market conditions can change, isn't it, man?
I always kind of suspected, was he up to something? Like, did he kind of like
Trading against you?
play against me?
Yeah.
I don't know why he would do that, but was he just like screwing with me?
So okay, so James, so you had 15 million, you went broke, you started trading. What happened the next time? Because you came back and you made like another 10 million, right?
Yeah, so okay, did a hedge fund, but I really hated trading, to be honest. I didn't like the kind of emotional volatility of trading. Like, you know how it feels.
Takes a
Like,
toll on you, yeah.
yeah, you feel all the blood in your body like pulsing on every tick of the futures. And I would go across the street to a church, and literally I would get down on my knees. It was an empty church, and I would pray to Jesus, "Please make S&P futures go in my direction." I'm Jewish, so it just never worked. And finally, I said, "Look, okay, I know though, I've done so much work in this. I know so many people now. I'm going to start a fund of hedge funds." And so I did. I invested about 60 million in 13 different hedge funds, maybe more, 14 or 15. And it was going really great. I was like clockwork, 1% a month, which is all anybody wanted. For my hedge fund, I was up 100%, the first year, or 120%. Nobody wanted that because you could lose that too if you're up that.
Yeah, yeah, huge reward, huge risk as well. They want steady with low drawdowns, right?
Right. So I started a very solid conservative fund of hedge funds, but I got to really learn every single hedge fund strategy, and I was really an expert at all hedge fund strategies. And then I'll skip a few beats. I started a website that basically kind of encapsulated what I knew about all these hedge fund strategies. So people didn't have to do two things. They didn't have to invest in a fund of hedge funds because I was going to give them all the strategies and all the techniques and all the trades right up front. And they didn't have to read the newspaper because the newspaper is all BS. Like anything you read in the news is written by somebody who has no concept about what really affects the stock market. But everybody thinks they need to read the news. So I made a website, the first financial media website that had no news, that went straight for the trades, and it was kind of like a social network. Like people could ask questions, talk to each other, become friends, and so on.
And
So
this was Stock Picker, right?
Right, stockpicker.com. Built it up to 1 million users a month. I sold it literally 8 months to the day after I started it, 4 months to the day after I officially launched it, actually. Sold it to thestreet.com. And I think they're still running it. I haven't looked at their site in forever, but I'm pretty sure they're still running it. Although I'm sure they did something crappy to it. I don't know. But so I made money again. I'm like, yes, I don't have to be a normal human being anymore ever again. I finally made back.
I've got my FU money again.
Yeah.
Now I'm a decamillionaire. Like, how did it feel to lose it and make it back? And how did you mentally bounce back? Because I don't know, man. You pulled yourself out of that twice. How like, I don't know if I could do that. I think if I lost 15 million bucks, I would be down and out. What did you do mentally to come back? Was it just time, or was there something consciously you did to make that happen?
Well, I was down and out. Like I mean, I was losing my house. I lost all my money. I didn't have any friends. My family wouldn't really talk to me. I wasn't talking to them, and I didn't know what to do. But I did have, as the only thing I had left really was I had this huge life insurance policy for my kids, and my kids were too young to remember me. So I thought, okay, maybe they would be better off with this life insurance policy than with me. And so I was really considering, like, how can I kill myself so that nobody would detect that it was a suicide? And there's really no way. So I had to give up on that plan. And, when I lost money the second time, it was even worse because then finally I got a divorce. I lost another house. I was just a wreck. Like, I was just in the worst shape. And I had to really figure out, like, look, clearly I know how to make it because I've made it in good times and bad times. The first time I made it, I thought I was just won a lottery ticket because it was the internet. But the second time and the third time, by the way, stockpicker.com was the third time. And but again, I lost it all. And I had to say, well, what do I keep doing when I'm on my way up? And what am I doing wrong on the way down? And what I was doing right on the way up, and it would take a while to get there, but starting around 2009 or 2010, I decided, like, forget it. I'm just going to start doing this every day now. So I call it, like, literally my daily practice. But it's based on four things. I try to be physically healthy, which all that just means is, eat well, sleep well, move well. I try to be emotionally healthy, which means have friends. Like before, I didn't have friends. I would make money and I would just say F you, all my friends. Like, I don't need to like you anymore. And but have real friends who are emotionally supportive, who love me, who I love, and so on. And so and you can't just do this overnight. You kind of have to, like, just a little bit every day of physical, a little bit every day of emotional. And then
you say in your book, you say 1% improvement every day, right?
Right, 1% improvement every day. And sometimes people ask me, what does that 1% mean? It doesn't really mean anything because what does 1% improvement in emotional health mean? There's no math to this, but it's just a feeling. Like, a 1% sort of means a tiny bit each day, enough
You're
that
just
you feel
focused
it.
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And mentally, this is very important. I view creativity and ideas as a muscle, and you only are going to succeed if you have better ideas than the people around you.
Yeah.
And not that it's zero sum, but you need to have good ideas to succeed. We're like in an idea economy right now, and that meaning you get paid if you come up with ideas to help other people. But most people have an atrophied idea muscle. So it's like the leg muscles. If you are in bed watching TV for 2 weeks and you never get out of bed, you literally need physical therapy to walk again because your leg muscles atrophy so fast. So the idea muscle works the same way. It atrophies really, really fast. So what I do now is I write down 10 ideas every single day. And what good, bad, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they're about. They're not business ideas. They're not book ideas. They could be, but it could just be anything. Like, I wrote an article the other day, 10 things I learned up from Serena Williams. So I've never really looked into her before, but she won Wimbledon. So I figured 10 things I learned from Serena Williams. And, I have to come up with 10 ideas. And usually by the seventh or eighth idea, they're really hard to come up with the last three. And so people think ideas are a dime a dozen. It's just not true. Ideas are a dime for about 3 or 4, and then it gets more difficult.
Yep.
And every day it's very, very difficult. But you feel it. After like a week or two of doing that, your brain is like connected up in ways you didn't expect. And you feel like it almost like your brain's tingling. And
and I can actually attest to that because when I first read your book, I read the section on the 10 ideas a day, and I was like, okay, it sounds good. It's kind of like, one of those self-help things, but I know you're like the no bullshit guy. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to try it. I walk 3 to 5 miles every morning, and I started doing it on my Evernote pad on my iPhone as I was walking. And it really is incredible. Like, I just started coming up with different business ideas and finding solutions to problems that I had been tripping on for months and months. So I would encourage anybody that's watching this, really, like, take it seriously and do it for a week or two. because it will change a lot.
Yeah, it can't hurt anybody. That's why you're right. It's simple and it almost sounds like self-help, but I don't really give self-help in the sense that I only say what I do. So this worked for me. And now also I've heard from a lot of people that it's worked for them too. Like literally my life changes so remarkably and so quickly. I would say every 6 months it's just unexpected where I am. I have no idea where I'll be 6 months from now just because things change
That's
so
so
quickly.
cool.
And then finally, the last leg of this kind of daily practice instead of feeling regret, like, oh my gosh, I lost all this money, or instead of feeling anxious, like every day there's opportunities to feel anxious, like, oh my God, I'm going to lose the next batch of money I'm going to get, or I'm going to get this or that or whatever, or people are going to hate me. Always try to feel grateful for whatever you have. And it's even better if you have difficult situations in front of you, figure out how to be grateful for those difficult situations. So like a very simple example is, let's say I am stuck in traffic. I could be annoyed, let's say I'm late for a meeting, or I can be grateful and say, this is fantastic. I'm living in the most amazing city in the world that everyone else wants to live in, so that's why I'm in traffic right now, because everyone else wants to be going where I'm going. And so solving these difficult gratitude problems also is kind of a real great opportunity for growth. And so by doing just those four things, not having any other goals, not having any other expectations, because who am I to have expectations against this vast universe? The universe has done pretty well without me for 14 billion years, so I can't force it to do anything else. All I can do is be physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually healthy, so I'm ready for whatever comes my way.
I love that attitude too, because I think in your book you talk a lot about, goals versus themes, and how to-do lists are just really stressful. And I when I read that, I was like, oh my God, that's true, man. Like I go into every day usually with like 50 things that I have to do, and you compound those and they're all so stressful. But when you break it down to just have themes, speak a little bit about that. Like what's the major difference there?
Well, take to-do list, for instance. Let's say I made a to-do list today. Like I was going to write 3 articles, do a podcast, make some phone calls, whatever. Now I'm talking to you. Maybe in my head I might be feeling anxious, like, oh, I've got all these things on my to-do list. But at any one point, we can only really focus our attention on one thing. So I just make sure at any given moment, I'm focused on the thing I have to do that has the highest priority. At any given moment, I'll know what has the highest priority because it's the thing that's on my mind. So at the end of the day, though, if I sit back and write down everything I did today, it'll be so much bigger than a to-do list, and it'll be so different than any to-do list I could have imagined. And by the way, it will all be things that were high priority items. So instead of being things that I need to do, it's always going to be things that I want to do. And, usually they'll intersect to some degree, but it's just much more effective and much more productive to be really focused on this interview because I wanted to do it. And it's there's nothing else, it's the highest priority thing. So there's no reason to be anxious about anything else. And so, like even right now, phone call coming in, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So, the I did list turns out to be much more effective because then the next day, when I'm thinking to myself, I'm thinking, okay, I have faith now that by the end of the day, if I always do the thing that has the highest priority this moment, I'm going to have a pretty cool I did list each day. And I'll get more things done anyway. So it's really worked for me to switch it back like that.
Yeah, that's so fun, man, because then you get to just focus on what you're passionate about and in the moment. And I think one of your major themes in the book was focus on being creative and being happy and just keeping it simple as opposed to focusing on things that you have to do.
Yeah, like people say, like people have asked me, well, don't you need some goals in life? Like, don't you want to have a goal to have $1 million or a goal to get married? Look, if you do your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, I guarantee you will get the right things for you. So if you're ready to get married, you're going to start meeting, a spouse, and the right person will come along, and
your focus will be there.
Yeah. If you're meant to start a business, you're going to come up with ideas about how to help people and how to monetize that, how to turn that into a business. And this stuff's just going to happen very naturally. You don't have to like say, okay, I'm gonna make $1 million in a year, so that's what I have to do in the next month. This is what I have to do in the next week. You don't really have to act that way. Like it's gonna just happen naturally.
Yep. James, why is the American dream dead? And what do you think is the best way for people to take control of their financial future right now?
Well, I remember this is almost like my first memory in life. Like I was about 3 or 4 years old, and literally before this moment, my parents could have just aborted me or left me like in a garbage dumpster, and it wouldn't have mattered. Like I wouldn't have even existed, so I
Yeah.
wouldn't remember anything. But I remember one day my dad like shaking me awake. James, you have to get ready, and I'm like, get ready for what? And he explained to me, well, you're going to nursery school. And I'm like, I don't want to. When's it over? And he thought I meant like in the bigger picture. So he said, well, you go to nursery school for a year, then kindergarten for a year, then elementary school, high school for 4 years, college for 4 years, and you're probably going to want to be a lawyer. So law school for 3 years, then you'll work for 40 years. And then when you're grandpa's age, you can retire. And I'm thinking, man, that sucks. That sounds really, really awful. And I think that's the American dream where you kind of fit that straight line and along the way you get promotions and then you buy a house and you have your 401k and you get married and you have 2 kids. Well, that's fine for some people, but it's not fine for most people. Most people want to do this instead of just a straight line. And in fact, I don't know anybody who has successfully done the straight line, to be honest. And yet, that's the American dream. And the American dream is sort of a scam. Like, we live in a $15 trillion, mortgage industry. They, of course, want you to buy a house. So the American dream they advertised to you was the house in the suburbs with the white picket fence that really the bank owns, and the corporation loves you to have a house because it's hard for you to move away from the corporation and get a new job, so there's less competition for employees from the corporation. And so better to be flexible in your life, better to live your dream than to live someone else's dream.
And a perfect example of that is right now, where are you staying?
Right now I'm in an Airbnb.
I love it. Last year, my wife and I traveled around the world. We did like 30 something countries, and Airbnb was pretty much our go-to place. And it's a beautiful thing. If you own a home, I built my first home when I was 19, had the corporate job, all that stuff. I thought I was living the dream, but every day on my way to work, I was miserable. I was like, why am I sitting in this traffic going to a job I hate? And it wasn't until I quit that, sold the house, and started traveling the world that I was like, okay, this is more my speed. And it's not for everybody, but like you said, I mean, the American dream has been packaged and sold to us that you should live a certain way, but not everybody's meant to live that mold.
Not everyone's meant to travel the world, but not everyone, like you say, not everyone is meant for the straight line. I would say the majority, 99.9% of people, are not meant for the classic American dream because that's just a marketing jingle. Like George Washington didn't say, let's all live the American dream. Like he wasn't thinking that way.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there is really no American dream. The American dream is that we get to do what you did. We get to sell our house and figure things out because we have this enormous freedom in our country that we should be grateful for. And like we could be down on America, like whatever your politics are, but the reality is you and I are talking over this amazing technology. You got to travel around the world. I'm in an Airbnb. I mean, it's great. Like, I'm gonna unplug my computer.
Let's do it. Let's go on a tour.
Hold on a second. I love this Airbnb. I just moved in here yesterday, and I'm here for a week.
Nice.
But like, look at this photograph. Can you see the photograph?
Oh yeah, we can see it.
It's a beautiful photograph. It's like the same woman. She's pregnant like 21 times, and
Sounds miserable.
and then here's out the window.
There you
Can
go.
see that? And my wife and I last year, we spent 3 months in Airbnbs, and we realized we didn't need anything.
Yeah.
We just needed like a couple outfits and a couple computers, and that was it. We could hop from Airbnb to Airbnb. So when we got home, we threw out everything in our house that we weren't essentially traveling with.
It's
So
beautiful,
he
man.
totally cleaned up our house.
Yeah, and you can live like relatively cheap going from Airbnb too. I mean, we had a beautiful condo down in South Africa, and then
Wow.
we were in Delhi, and then all through Southeast Asia and Europe. And I mean, Airbnb is everywhere now, and it's like a third the cost of hotels, and it's just more of a home experience too.
Oh yeah, I just stayed in a three I stayed in a three-story. I was just in London last week, and I stayed in a three-story house, and I was paying the same amount. The video guy who was videotaping my event, he was staying in a Hilton. He was paying the same price for one room, one bathroom. I had three bedrooms, three bathrooms, and a kitchen for the exact same price in an Airbnb.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy. So James, I consider myself like a baby angel investor. I live here in Austin, Texas.
Oh my
I guess
God, you live in Austin, Texas?
Yeah.
Everyone lives in Austin, Texas. Like all
everybody's coming here, man. It's like the place to be now. We've been here for 6 years, and I feel like a lifelong resident.
Okay, I'm gonna name some names. We probably know a ton of people in common.
All right.
Ryan Dice,
Of course, he's right down the street.
Tucker Max,
Of course.
Austin Kleon,
Nope.
Noah Kagan,
Yeah, Noah. Yep.
Ryan Holiday,
Yeah, Ryan's here.
Hugh MacLeod,
Nope.
Charlie Hone.
Nope.
Okay, well you know at least half of the people I know.
Yeah, and it's a really great place to be, but like, so I've been plugged into an angel investing network here, and I've looked at over 150 pitches, but I don't know if it's my like skeptical day trader attitude or whatever, but most of the pitches that I see, I'm not interested in. I've come pretty close to making some significant investments, but nothing too big yet. I just want to know if you have any advice, like if there's any tips that you found in your angel investing, and maybe even tell everybody who's watching this what kind of experience you have doing the angel stuff.
Yeah, so my angel investing experience has been great. It was very bad initially, but I kind of learned from my mistakes. I mean, it was when I say it was bad initially, it was bad for like 10 years, but or not that long, 7 years. But the key is the key is to say to yourself out loud, "I am an idiot." And I'm not talking about you specifically, I'm talking about me. So I want to make sure everybody else involved who is thinking of putting money into this or who is managing this is smarter than me in every way. So I want to see that great investors like, I don't know, let's make up some names, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, whoever. I want to see that they're co-investing alongside of me. And they invest in a lot of deals, so it's not impossible to see small angel deals where they're investing. I want to see that the CEO has built and sold a business before, which unfortunately means I would not be in the next Facebook, but it does mean I would be in several good companies that I'm currently in. I want to see, those are really the two most important things. Then I want to understand, is this a demographic trend that I really believe is going to be huge in the future and can't be easily replaced? So for instance, back in the 90s, obviously the internet was a huge trend that was going to happen. In 2007, I invested in a company that was focused on marketing over social media. And this was just at the beginnings of where people realized social media wasn't just going to be MySpace. It was going to be something that was going to be all over the world. So I invested in a company called Buddy Media in their their earliest seed round. Like, I knew Mike Lazarow, who had sold golf.com. He was starting Buddy Media. I actually do think Peter Thiel invested in that one, or some other huge guys. A whole bunch of people invested. It was like a $4 million valuation. It sold, I think, in 2012 for $900 million to Salesforce.com. So I knew that trend was going to work. And everything else I had thought about the company, I was wrong. And by the way, Michael Lazarow, the CEO, was wrong too. It was going to be a Facebook gaming company, and instead he turned into a services company helping people set up on Facebook, and then he turned it into a product company, like a SaaS company, helping people market their pages using various software as a service tools. So nobody knows anything, and we all got lucky, but fortunately everybody was smart all around him, and he's a genius.
Well, and it seems like that's a good escalation going from service to SaaS. And I know one of the themes that, talking about trends, one of the trends you were talking about in your book was FinTech, financial technology. And I know that you released your first Choose Yourself book as a Bitcoin only book early, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
what's your opinion now today on Bitcoin?
Who asked me that 2 days ago was my 13-year-old daughter Molly.
No kidding.
So
Nice.
yeah, he was like wondering. And then my brother-in-law, who's from Argentina, he also asked me about it in the past few days because I guess Argentina's having problems with their
Currency
currency.
controls, yeah.
But I don't really know. Like I haven't been seeing as much about Bitcoin as I saw, 2 years ago when it was really like in the news. So I don't know. I think financial technology now is a lot more about, what's how do you determine the value of a currency? It's all based on trust.
Hmm.
So particularly as transactions get more and more electronic, you have to be able to trust what's happening in between me and you if I were to make a payment. And so I think financial technology is really about, understanding at a deep level that the person giving me money is trustworthy and the money he's giving me is real. And so I think financial technology is gonna kind of happen around that. And so you see that in examples like Palantir, which is a very successful company, actually started by Peter Thiel, which is based on technology he created in PayPal, where it helped eBay transactions determine if there were any frauds going on. And so Palantir looks for frauds all over the place, actually helps the US government look for terrorists based on how financial transactions work. I think micropayments are an issue there as well. How do you trust them, and how do you lower the fees on them? So I don't know. I kind of feel eventually there will be some cyber currency, but I still think we're a little bit far away from that.
Yeah, and
Um,
I have a lot of viewers and listeners that are into Bitcoin. I trade Bitcoin, and I think a lot of people are kind of hoping for the moon on this thing. But as you probably think, and I've said from the beginning, nobody really knows. It's like the first kind of successful experiment in the cryptocurrency space. But I think as long as user adoption keeps up with the supply, the new supply of coins that are coming out on the market, it has a shot. And talking about trust, what system do you trust more? I'm just kind of curious on your opinion, like a fiat system like US dollars or, a math-based currency like Bitcoin or something like that.
well, let's say I'm completely naive. All I've heard about is Silk Road being hacked
Right.
and everybody going to jail and people losing like $100 million worth of Bitcoin. So that's like in the news, or it was in the news a year ago. And so that's what I remember. If I'm being totally naive. Now I keep up with it a little bit more, so I'm not totally naive. But the completely naive user, that's what they're worried about. And so that worry will be overcome. That's a typical problem for anything. The US currency is based on a mega powerful army that will just destroy anybody who tries to take it down.
Yeah.
Like, people forget about the fact that every single drop of water in the entire world is controlled by the US Navy. There is no water that the US Navy can't make a decision on what happens in. And so that's incredibly empowering to our fiat currency. Everything's a fiat currency ultimately. It's all built on trust. Gold is a fiat currency. People say no, gold has value. No, gold is just a rock, and we can decide that we're going to give some value to it. Gold and silver have the exact same chemical properties, but gold is valued here and silver is valued here. So which is fiat and which is not? I don't know. Silver actually has actual productive uses, whereas gold has less. So I don't know. The U.S. currency is pretty powerful right now, and it's getting stronger right now, despite let me ask you this: for the past 5 years, everyone has said the U.S. currency is going to crash.
Oh yeah, everybody's been looking for hyperinflation, and you have the gold bugs on TV pushing for $5,000 an ounce, and it's going the opposite way.
Yeah. Meanwhile, there's probably deflation. Like, my phone here is cheaper today than it was a year ago. This computer is cheaper today than it was a year ago. Like, everything I want is cheaper now than it was a year ago. This Airbnb I'm staying at is cheaper than a hotel room. So I don't know. I really don't know. Like, that strikes to me that the U.S. currency is almost getting too strong now. It's getting a little harder to outsource. Everyone says we're in a knowledge economy. I don't know. I don't believe that anymore because I can always outsource knowledge. Like I can outsource software, research, translations. I can almost outsource all knowledge to like India or Malaysia or Vietnam or wherever. But it's getting harder to do that with all currencies kind of getting stronger. Actually, like India currencies are getting stronger too, but the U.S. currency is remaining as strong as ever.
Yeah. So I always wanted to ask you this because I get asked this question quite a bit. What advice would you give, a 20 to 25-year-old that kind of followed the traditional path, like went to college, got a degree, and is now like stuck in a job that they hate?
First off, see if there's a way the question is, why do they hate their job? Like, do they hate their job because they're just miserable people, or do they hate the job because, the real test is it possible for them to come up with good enough ideas where they become so indispensable at their job that their financial success is tied to the financial success of the job? Because I guarantee you then they'll start to enjoy their job better. They'll feel competent. The essence of well-being is not necessarily finding your passion, because there's no such thing as finding your passion. There's all sorts of things we're good at. The essence of well-being is demonstrating competence and growth, having good emotional relationships, and having freedom of decisions. So you can have that at a job. You can come up with a great idea that you love, that the job says, great, go for it, and we'll even compensate you more for it. You can have good relationships with your coworkers, meaning you can help them do their jobs better, and they can love you for it. And you can have freedom in your choices, because if you come up with the idea for a job and they give you the responsibility to execute on that, then you're going to have freedom. So with those three things together, you'll wake up in the morning with well-being. You'll be excited about your job. And so if your job does not let you do that, then it's time to look for a new job.
And I think that's probably the challenge, is that a lot of people don't get that kind of incentivization or incentive to be autonomous and take it to the next level. And like you talk about in your Choose Yourself books, the middle class is disappearing and corporations are looking for reasons to fire people and basically to flush that out. So if somebody doesn't have that choice, what would you recommend? Just say quit right away, or do what you did and work at night and try to build it as you go?
You shouldn't quit right away, because you might not be able to pay your bills, but you definitely need to figure out how to have multiple sources of income so that you're not dependent on this lousy job. And so one multiple source of it, there's millions of blogs about multiple sources of income. There's not just one. But you could start a job on the side. You could do these sources of income on the side. You could also start trying to find a job where they'll be appreciative of your ideas. By the way, it also means you have to get your idea muscle exercised, because maybe you're coming up with bad ideas. So start those 10 ideas a day so you could come up with ideas that make you indispensable to a job. But then find a job that will let you tie your financial success to the success of your ideas, and then you start moving in the right direction. By the way, then once you do that, because you have more control over your life, then you'll start to be able to have multiple sources of income too, because you'll start having more ideas outside the job, but you'll still be very good at what you're supposed to do within the job. I don't care too much about the distinction between employee and entrepreneur. All I know is that everybody, employee or entrepreneur, needs multiple sources of income, so you don't have to feel too panicked about any one situation. You don't have to hate a job, for instance. You could just quit it if it's no good.
Yep. I think that's incredible advice. And, I want to go ahead and plug your book and your guide, the Choose Yourself Guide. True story. My mom this morning texted me and said, I'm trying to encourage her to kind of take the leap of faith and, get out on her own. And one of the things she just texted me a couple hours ago was, if there was one book you could recommend, what would it be? And it is the Choose Yourself books, because they are just really, really powerful, man. And I appreciate you coming on and doing this interview. What is the guide about? And I know you've got kind of a package that you put together. Maybe tell everybody what that is.
Well, the book Choose Yourself was basically my story of how I had nothing, and this is what worked for me, and these are what dreams were demolished for me, and how I had to put myself back together and really achieve success again. And the Choose Yourself Guide to Wealth is about what are some other specific techniques, like how to be a better negotiator, how to be a better public speaker, how to be a better salesperson, how to make an elevator pitch, how to persuade people, how to self-publish a book, all these specific things. Again, I'm not going to tell anybody, here's where you should put your button, here's how you should share on Pinterest, because those things change like every other day.
Yeah.
Like, a few months ago it was Meerkat. Everyone had to be on Meerkat. Now it's Periscope. None of these things mean anything. So I want to get right down to the heart of what are the evolutionary biases that helped me, in all of the different decisions and persuasions and communications that I had to do, and how can I be healthy from the inside out? If you have energy on the inside, you'll be able to bring that energy to the outside, and that's what really both of those books are about. And then I have a third book coming out on September 1st called The Rich Employee, which is about this idea that it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or an employee. You could be a billionaire, you could be a millionaire. It doesn't matter. Like, really what matters is mastering these different skill sets and having the right mindset. And those are the crucial things. And that kind of like almost rounds out the trilogy. And alongside that, I mean, if you go to my blog, jamesaltucher.com, you could sign up for my email newsletter. I send out emails for free, like pretty much every day. I have a podcast every day. I have another podcast twice a week. I have a third podcast I'm about to launch on September 1st with the guy who wrote Freakonomics. We're doing it together.
Nice.
And I also have a premium newsletter which kind of details more of my thoughts. It's specifically about like the economy and health and so on. And then later on, I'm doing a higher end newsletter, actually really diving back into what I used to do, which is, my connections with hedge funds. What are they working on? What are they thinking about? What stocks are they looking at? And that's about 6 weeks down the road. But
that's some huge stuff, man. So anybody watching this, I'll link it up in the video, and we'll just get them to your site where they can get that. And I know it's going to add a ton of value for everybody. So thank you so much for coming on, man. I know we're going pretty long here, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But yeah, man, thank you. This was great.
I really appreciate it. And say hi to Austin for me. Like, I love that city. So everyone I know lives there. So
well, give me a ring whenever you come down, man. We live right downtown. So.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks a lot, man. Enjoy your Airbnb, and I will talk to you soon, buddy.